Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Morning Update Show. I'm your co-host, Trey Holiday, and it is a great Thursday for you guys that we are bringing to the masses. As always, y'all know I got to throw it on over to my guy, Big O, bringing it to us digitally. What's up, Big O? Happy Thursday.
Well, it's definitely digitally, but once again, we're not together. Maybe I think we're working on a few things over here. We're trying out the different formats, but you always bring that magic to the set, right? So I can't wait till we're reunited the way we should, right?
Yes, absolutely. It'll be so amazing, as always.
Yeah, so a lot to talk about today. Clearly, there was the decision that came out yesterday out of Louisville, about the same time that we went on air. Protests across the country as well as here in Seattle last night. Also, we got an interview, sat down with Andre Taylor the other day, talked about his street czar position there. So we'll play a few clips from that. The full interview is up on our YouTube page. And also talked to Ashley Hiruko, who is a journalist over at KUOW, and she looked into allegations of racism and intimidation at the King County Jail. Some of this stuff going back for decades over there with the corrections officers,
Wow.
with black corrections officers over there. Hey, but before I jump into all of this, man, I really want to address something out here. This really it's got me kind of heated this morning. What has me heated this morning is like the overwhelming liberalism and white privilege of white people here in Seattle that want to tell black media that's built their media with their hands, scrape their hands, who we should and should not cover. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about this Andre Taylor thing. People know me and they know Andre Taylor. Me and Andre Taylor don't agree on almost anything. And, it comes together all together. But our black community, our people in our community want to hear from Andre Taylor. And I think it's the ultimate of white privilege here in this city for white people to sit here and be like, well, why are you giving Andre a platform? Because black people on Union, on Jackson, on Henderson, on Othello, on Cherry, they want to hear from him. And so it's like, man, Seattle's crazy like that. It's crazy that the white community is so privileged that they'll tell black media who we should interview and who we cannot interview. We didn't build Converge for your community. We built it for our community. Just like Chris B. Bennett over there at the media, just like Fitzgerald Beaver, rest in peace, at the Facts newspaper, so we can report on issues for our people in our community. And this is Seattle for you. You know what I'm saying? It's liberalism gone over the cliff. It's white privilege gone over the cliff. The audacity to tell black media owners who we can report on for when people who our community is able to hear from or not hear from. Man, I'm hot this morning, Trey.
Oh man, oh, that is way too much. And honestly, once again, we keep on hearing the variety of voices. This is what happens with the explosion of the internet. A lot of people that are outside of the community talking on issues that they have no real clue about. And unfortunately, you are so right. This media is not all about
I'm not having it. It's not about you.
Right.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
It's not about you. This is black media for our black community in our black neighborhood in Seattle. And if the rest of Seattle and beyond can benefit from it, that's fantastic. That means we're doing a good job. But all this white privilege over here, this extreme white liberalism, that you can sit somewhere maybe in a different neighborhood in Magnolia or wherever you might be. I know I'm always saying Magnolia, wherever you might be, and dictate the news that black people deserve to hear. Man, it's preposterous. And I'll tell you this, there absolutely is no other media platform here in the Pacific Northwest that creates more unique video content for black people than Converge. You know what I'm saying? For every single black protest that's been there, you see me on Capitol Hill with an iPhone. The black protest, three camera setup for 8 hours. There's nobody who's elevated more black voices on video than us. There's no people that's elevated more black elders than us. And to be honest with you, it's funny because the white liberals are sitting there in their privilege trying to tell me who I can report on and who I can't. But man, I don't hear nothing when you talk about black organizations. Nikita Oliver ain't got no problem who I interview. White King ain't got no problem who I interview. Ain't nobody from King County Equity now got a problem with who I interview. So what makes you an authority sitting somewhere who you don't operate in our community to sit here and talk about who Converge can talk to and can't talk to?
Well, you know what? Also, too, you hit the nail on the head earlier by saying the black community wants to hear from Andre Taylor, period, point blank. It doesn't matter what other people have a concern about. Honestly, people do want to understand how he's utilizing this platform, this new position, what he's doing with the mayor. I mean, technically, historically speaking, there's always been these issues between community and city officials. So to see someone from the community trying to represent as a street czar, it's a new thing. Of course the community wants to hear about this, and so you're absolutely right to be this upset this morning. I'm sorry it's got you like
no, I mean, I'm saying it's heated because this is something that's been going on. It's been going on, and it's funny because it's never no black people who's hitting me. There's never no black people. If anything, all the black people been hitting me like, man, you slow on the story. You the only person that ain't talked to Andre. We want to know about it. You know what I'm saying? Our black community, who we represent. This was built in the Central District. And you know what's crazy, Triana, is I interviewed Andre Taylor for the first time 5 years ago. So all you new booties who's out there on the scene because of protest and everything else, and now you're following things. 5 years ago, I was the first time I interviewed Andre Taylor. And all you new people out there think it's the Protest Network. Nah, this is the black community's video network for the Central District and South End of Seattle. We happen to be covering the protests right now, but we cover what's important for black people in our community. You got a problem with that? Come see me on Union, come see me on Jackson, come see me on Yesler, come see me on Henderson, Othello, Garfield High School, Rainier Beach High School, Franklin High School, because if you don't register in our community, I'm honest with you, you don't register at all.
Oh man, fired up this morning indeed, and actually rightfully so. I understand your sentiments wholeheartedly and concur.
Man, I'm telling you, Trey, it's the wrong day. So yeah, dear super white privileged over the top liberal white person, please stop. Go find you another network. Because you know what? We are going to report on what black people in our neighborhood want to hear. Your privilege does not extend to Converge. Your privilege does not extend to telling black people what news they deserve to hear and don't hear. So you know exactly where you can take that privilege because it ain't welcome here. Let me get right into it.
Wait, let me say too, that the thing is that you also said earlier that this news resonates with so many people. So, hey, if it's not resonating with you, fine. You can go find your news elsewhere. But the idea is that there's a real heartbeat center of all of this, and that is the black community, period, point blank. And it's resonating with so many, as we always give thanks to so many in Portland, beyond UK, all these places that are outside of the CD, because our news resonates with the people. So our product is good, man. And at the end of the day, we give that platform to everybody on all sides. We want to hear from all sides all the time. And this one in particular is very much a fabric of the black community. And we definitely wanted to hear from Andre. So I'm glad that you sat down with him, man.
Man, exactly. And Andre, people who know me know Andre Taylor's somebody I don't agree with. You know what I'm saying? I haven't agreed with a lot of Andre Taylor stuff for years. But you know what? This is a news platform that provides culturally relevant information for our community. This is what our community wants. We're black. If you guys haven't noticed, we're black people. We're from the Central District of Seattle. We went to James A. Garfield High School, and we're going to continue to report on news and information that's important for black people in our community. We was doing that before these protests. We'll be doing that after these protests. So like I said, take your white privilege and your ultra liberal. These are the same liberals that be out there. These are the same people that voted for Obama. They got Michelle's book, you know what I'm saying, at their library, but then they pass these policies that totally work against black people's favor. I know these kind of people. These are the kind of people that they're so liberal that they don't think us black people can make up our own minds for ourselves. So they got to do it. Well, you know, I voted for Barack My wife, she went down there with her girlfriends and saw Michelle at the Tacoma Dome. But then they'll go there and they'll look at a resume and turn down the resume because of the spelling of the name. So it's like, come on, man, I'm sick of that. You know what I'm saying? I'm pushed too far this morning.
I know, clearly. I appreciate you putting it out there because the people need to hear this from you too and actually understand the heartbeat of where you come from. So thank you for sharing.
As they say, man, CD or see me. Exactly. Man, I got a clip right here. It's 2 minutes from ABC News. So we're going to go into this ABC News Nightline clip real quick about some of the developments around the Breonna Taylor case. And then we're going to come back with that, with Andre Taylor, then KUOW, and then we're going to get into some of the protest stuff from last night, which was, man, interesting in itself. Here's ABC News Nightline.
Tonight, a city on edge.
This is definitely not justice for Black people. We are so used to the system not working for us that officers get away with murdering us with impunity.
A scene so familiar, laced with so much pain. Police and protesters swarming Louisville, Kentucky as a grand jury concluded its investigation nearly 200 days after the death of Breonna Taylor, whose case has become a rallying cry for racial justice.
In our country, when you murder someone, you're supposed to be charged with murder. We believe that those officers should have been indicted on murder charges.
But no murder charges were filed. No manslaughter charges either against officers Brett Hankison, Jonathan Mattingly, and Miles Cosgrove for Taylor's killing. Instead, the grand jury did indict Detective Hankison, who fired 10 shots from outside Breonna's apartment on 3 counts of wanton endangerment for gunfire endangering her neighbors.
A lot of outrage surrounds this idea that the indictment names neighbors, but not Breonna Taylor or Kenneth Walker in listing as victims of this action.
Yeah, it's heart-wrenching to see who the victims are in this case. Because with this indictment, what we're basically saying, or what Louisville is actually saying, is that no killing occurred here.
I think critics might argue that the law protected officers in this case.
If anything, critics would be correct in saying that this criminal justice system, as they call it, worked to the benefit of these officers. The phrase is infamous. You can indict anything, even a ham sandwich. Yet you cannot indict a ham sandwich if it's wearing a badge. And that's what we're seeing here.
Investigators say Sergeant Cosgrove fired the shot that killed Breonna.
According to Kentucky law, the use of force by Mattingly and Cosgrove was justified to protect themselves. This justification bars us from pursuing criminal charges in Miss Breonna Taylor's death.
How crucial is it that Kenneth Walker fired that first shot?
I think it is absolutely crucial, and the fact that there was no criminal charges associated with it. Because but for that first shot from Kenneth Walker, there would have been no reason for an officer to shoot a single bullet, yet alone the dozens of bullets that penetrated those apartments.
Well, wow. So that whole clip is up. It's ABC News Nightline. It's about 7 minutes long. Clearly, we couldn't play the 7-minute clip in here, but that's over there for people to check out more. I mean, it's a lot of stuff. The whole country, all across the country, was in the streets last night, and we're going to talk about the protest and protest coverage a little bit more into the show. And man, the much anticipated, this is already up there on YouTube. The full interview with Andre Taylor is about 38 minutes long. We sat down in his office there in Municipal Tower. It's on about like maybe the 40th floor or something like that. The Not This Time offices. I'm just playing four clips from here from the interview. And like I said, people can view the whole interview online. The first clip that I actually tweeted out this morning on Twitter is about the title. I remember me and you talked about the title. It's like, yo, man, what is this street czar? It made no sense to me, actually in our discussion, because I'm like, and especially with a geographic area being Capitol Hill, it's like, yo, was that street? Is it whatever? Or people assuming that Black people are all street people? Anyways, I put the question to him as to what is a street czar.
Tell us a little bit more now about the street czar position. What is this all about?
I got the street czar name from the Obama administration because every president had particular czars, education czars, drug czars, and I said that would That would be an interesting thing to have. A street czar is really a person that is an in-between person between community and the city. What's important about a street czar, why I coined the phrase, is that it's an individual that have gone through some things in his life, have overcome some things in his life, and yet has a credibility because of the things that he's gone through and overcame. I have a friend named Big U that's in Los Angeles. He is responsible for 80% of the reduction of gang violence there, but he was a quote-unquote OG, an individual who was Nipsey's OG, you know, that had been to prison and the like, but because of his influence and him turning his life around working with the city of Los Angeles, I consider Big U to be a street czar. And there are many street czars unnamed around the country that need to be put into positions if cities would like to see some of the violence quelled, right, and a conversation continuing to be started.
All right, so there's the answer there on street czar, right? And yeah, the czar. I mean, he's referenced on on a federal level, a presidential level. You've heard people say, well, here here's a drug czar, here's an education czar, and he's titled it the street czar. That's his explanation of it, in saying that in different areas of America, he pointed out Los Angeles, that Big U, who we mentioned there, is somebody who he considers a street czar for linking the streets in the community, or basically the streets and
the city.
The city.
Yeah. I mean, okay. I mean, at least we're getting to understand a little bit more about the reason for the naming, and understanding a little bit about even him saying that it is about someone who has gone through things, because I think some of the chattering community is, he's had a checkered past, or, how could the city, partner with, someone in that regard. But him clarifying that is, maybe something that the community really wanted to hear.
All right. And so now moving on, and I talked to Andre Taylor about protests, and the protests going on Capitol Hill and throughout the city. Now, I also asked him, he gives a response here about protesters. I also asked him in the full interview, because he had comments about the protesters, what his comments were about the police and the police use of force. So that's in the full interview up on our YouTube channel. Let's see here, number 2.
What exactly are you seeing out there?
I think that it's been kind of overwhelmed by the anarchists, and that they have used an opportunity, right, along with white liberals, to now push whatever agenda that they're pushing. I don't think it has anything to do with Black lives, right? Because Black people have been in this country for over 400 years, and we already know how we cannot operate. And we know we can operate with violence. We've seen historically what happens if we try to push an issue with violence. So growing up, Black people would always say, your parents would tell you, at least when I was growing up, that if you're petitioning for a job, you have to be 10 times sharper than the white man. Well, this elevates the culture, right, if this is the focus. So the violence is more or less white folks that feeling their privilege and their ability to do so without the same type of harm that will happen to Black people. And that's my concern, right? I feel like the protest of agitation, and I didn't come up with agitation. There were people that have said that they are professional agitators, right? And that is a way that they feel they want to move. Well, we are in direct opposition to just agitation. We're trying to bring people together.
So now in the full interview, like I said, I push back on this in the sense that it's like, it seemed a lot of lumping in, and first of all, I had to point out that there's protests that are happening all over the city. Plenty of you guys there at Africa Town, King County Equity Now, Coach Dom, those guys, Sean out there in the South, man, different kinds of demonstrations, family, urban family, Paul Patu, all these guys, they're doing demonstrations and protests all the time, across Seattle. And also, it's the term agitator. Man, it's got a connotation from all over the place. and to really like specify, exactly what it is, because if he's talking about really a small group of people, then that's not really the protesters.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he almost kind of clarified it a little bit there by saying, like, well, there's some people that claim to be professional agitators. But earlier he was talking about violence and anarchy. And I don't think they're all synonymous. And the way that he was talking about them made them sound very synonymous.
Yeah, man, Seattle, you got to be careful with the word anarchist. You know what I'm saying? It's I'm sure he'll find out. But anyways, moving on here. My next was payment. So, it's this is something. So this is what I'm saying. Our community, our Black community, Black people in our neighborhood want to know. It's like, man, why aren't you doing this for free? This is a question that's come from Big Mama and them all the way to people in the streets. You know what I'm saying? Our community wants to know this. I don't know about other communities, but our community wants to know, how come Andre Taylor's not out there working for free? Other people really want to know as well. They're like, bro, that looks dangerous out there. How come you're not getting paid more money?
Why isn't this guy out there doing this for free? And this is Black community, like people I know from the neighborhood who are making these comments, so not just randoms. So, man, why isn't this guy out here doing this work for free if he's really about the work? And then we got other people in our community who's like, man, that's it, $150. Sure. Where do you fall in on all this?
I think that we've been so conditioned to work for free. This country is a country of capitalism, right? That wants to sponsor your genius. People go to school, they get an education, and whatever they work for, there's a value attached, right, to that work. In past, and still going on now, Black people have been required to utilize their genius and their expertise, and they haven't got paid for it, while white people and white organizations get all the money and never impact our community. And I just felt like, not this time, right? And if there is a little legacy left, I want Black and brown people to understand whatever you contribute to society, there's enough money out there to make sure that you're compensated for your genius and your brilliance and your abilities and your skills. But they want to make us feel guilty while they keep getting paid. You will never, ever have an issue with another nationality feeling empowered by what they have to offer because it's attached with value, some type of value. But we, a lot of times, come up out of a victim's mentality, and we don't feel like we deserve the same as other people. But I know I deserve the same. And my genius might not be theirs, but it's mine. And it's enough to have led this whole state with history. So no matter what anybody is saying, no one can diminish the fact of the work that we've done. No one. And for that, if you want to utilize my social and political capital, you think I'm going to give you that for free? That'll never happen. It'll never happen. And you're not going to make me feel bad about the value of what I have to offer. That won't happen either.
Your thoughts, Trey?
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because I agree with his point about, utilizing, people's social capital for the whims of, your goals, your initiatives, your intention, and people really getting paid for that. I will say I definitely agree with that. I do think, though, that one of the underlying things about community and the city is, taking a position within the city is very much actually following in his pathway of saying you got to work within the system. And somehow he believes that taking on this position, working within the system, maybe making some incremental changes, doing things very much in a more controlled environment, in a sense of like controlled by the city, then, I think that he's doing what he feels is best. I do think, though, that the growing sentiment outside of his ideals is that that hasn't worked for us. And what we've seen is that, a lot of the times, the city wants to pull people together from the community and, get their genius. Hey, we need you guys to run this program. We need you to connect with community. We need you for this. We need community. We need community for this. And so they come and rest on community leaders, community organizations, thought leaders and change makers. They do this all the time. And so he's right. Historically, they tried to do this stuff for free. And even now, they try to still get away with it at times, where they have these reverse programs where they'll do reimbursements after you've done the work. And so there's a lot of this kind of relationship issues that have always been kind of there within community and city. And I think what he's doing is he represents a different mindset than what we're really seeing, this growing, swelling voice on the ground saying we can no longer take that approach.
Right. Well, I mean, part of him saying, like, listen, if you want to pay, if you need to pay me for my like he said, his political capital, his thoughts, his whatever. I mean, people are supposed to get paid for that. The problem is, in our community, people have never gotten paid for that. And we traditionally work for free, and then people take advantage of the fact that you're trained to work for free and everything else. So, you know what I'm saying? As far as saying, like, look, man, if I'm going to be out here, I'm going to be working, then I need to get paid. I think most people in our community agree with that. I think that the issue is that, well, he clarifies in the interview that he's not a city employee, so he's not working directly for the city. He's a consultant that advises the city. And so he's not working directly under their purview. He can, he's a consultant who's over there. But, I mean, this payment is $150,000 a year. Like I said, for some people in our community, they're like, man, he should just be out there. And others, like, there's a lot of people who are seeing what's happening out here, and they're like, man, 150 is not enough.
Yeah, well, he didn't address that part too much there in that clip. I'm wondering if he said anything.
This in the full interview.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Because, that's also a part of it too, is that, the city, has it's just unfortunate because the history is there. That's what makes it a bit unfortunate, because the history is that maybe they don't pay enough for these things as well. So agreed.
Well, yeah, I mean, and when you talk about some of the other consultants that come in there, especially around policing and community and everything else, again, those firms are getting $500,000 a year or more. You know what I'm saying? If you were to really look at the numbers of what the city is paying who for what, I think that a lot of people would be surprised. It just came to me also in the full interview. I asked Andre about how much influence does he have with the mayor? Is he sitting in on the budgeting process around this $100 million that we're going to talk about here in a little bit? So he answers quite a few questions there. The last Andre Taylor clip that I'm going to play today is the question that, I've been asking everybody as of late, especially. And that question is, man, how credible are you? And that's something that we saw in the comments when we first carried the story about the street czar. There's in the comments, a lot of people are like, man, is this dude credible? How is he credible? Do you remember that?
Absolutely. It was a huge deal. Definitely another rising voice from folks in the community.
Right. And so, I asked him about his credibility, and you'll see here in this clip, he talks about, things that he's accomplished. Now, what he's talking about is the passage of I-940. I don't think you hear that in the clip. I-940 was Washington State's and maybe the country's first police accountability law. And it's under I-940 that the officer that killed Jesse Saray down in Auburn, Officer Nielsen, is actually, I believe, being charged under I-940, the police accountability law. Andre Taylor pushed I-940 forward starting 5 years ago when his brother, Che Taylor, was killed by the SPD. So when he references what his accomplishments here in this clip, he's talking about I-940.
How credible are you?
Listen, my mom was a pimp. My dad was a pimp. My dad was a prostitute. My dad was a pimp. My mom was a prostitute. My dad was a pimp. I come from the gutter. I lived that life, overcame that life, overcame prison, you know, overcame the streets. And it wasn't enough for me just to talk about what change I wanted to have. I had to put the work in. I've been married 22 years. I have a son graduated from Yale, a daughter who graduated from UCLA. I teach young folks right now that you don't have to be defined by your past. I'm not going to allow anybody to define me by my past. It was a past, I lived it, it was wrong, I overcame it. And not that I just overcame it, I put historic work in that no one in the country has been able to do. And if that's not credible enough, to having come from such a place that most people never get out of, never, right? Some of them fall through the terrain of the street life in the ghetto. And I've been able to get out of there and tell my story as often as possible, knowing that if I tell my story, there will some that will be in backlash against me. But Malcolm X told his story. He was a pimp called Red, and he became a statesman. Who am I? I'm not comparing myself to Malcolm X by no means, but who am I not to tell my story, to empower young black brothers in the street, to show that you also can overcome whatever you've faced in your life. That's the most important thing to me, is to empower my people. And they need an example of change. And I'm going to represent that to them. It might not be sufficient to the average person. It might not. And I'm okay with that. Right? But I didn't come for them. And I didn't come for perfect people. I came for wounded people.
Right.
Well, you know, he says there he came for wounded people. I think my first thought was, I think the contract is specific about, you know, really derailing some of the uprising that's been specific to Capitol Hill. And
so hold on, let me jump in. Let me jump in. So because we clarified that in the interview, I was like, yo, so it's just Capitol Hill. I said, look at all these black people who are dying. Like way more people are dying in the black community, the gun violence, than what's occurring on Capitol Hill. Like, man, people dying anywhere is bad. Don't get me wrong. So I was like, you're just going to hang out up on Capitol Hill? What about all these other people? And he said that his movement is throughout the city.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks for getting that clarification, because you know that was a big deal for you and I when we first heard the wording that was in the in the contract with him in the city. But I will say that his sentiments are definitely felt within community. What he's talking about is the work of Choose 180, creative justice. Community passageways. Go ahead.
Well, yeah. I was gonna say I brought that up too. I said, well, why do we need a street czar when it sounds like a lot of what you're doing is the same things the community passageway is doing? With Coach Dom, Choose 180, with Sean Good, Willard Jimerson, United Better Thinking, Dre Franklin with Bill, and he elaborates on it. We got to still send people to the whole interview.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's where my mind goes. When you ask me about my thoughts, my mind immediately goes to your next questions, which I knew that you were going to get clarification on, because we are the CD. When you put that in that clip that starts and ends this show, that is because we really are. And honestly, we are on the ground. We know who's doing this work, and it's unfortunate because what's happening in our community right now, with this street czar position and with this it's creating some form of division, because unfortunately it's like everybody knows that these are so many voices that have been lifted up, and nobody, in no way, I have not heard anyone ever say, what he passed, that law wasn't big deal. That is a huge deal. It's a huge deal. And, never to take away or take any take any light away from that work. But I do think that this connectivity that we're seeing on the ground is something that is organic because it's relational. And it's one of the things that I worry about when it comes to, the mayor wanting to say, I'm going to listen to the voice of this, one person or this one organization, when there is a larger voice happening and brewing right in her city that is representative of so many more voices, and collectively those
So
voices
hold on. Are you saying that are you saying that you feel that the mayor might listen to Andre Taylor and not King County Equity now
yeah,
on issues around gun violence?
I mean, I feel that getting someone a position, giving someone a paid contract kind of indicates that that's going to be your go-to person for this work. Clearly, he has deliverables that he's going to have to, come to, hey, this is my report, or these are the people I talk to. This is how I'm doing this street czar work. He's going to have to do some type of
Well,
representation of that. And unfortunately, it does sometimes make the community feel like, well, how much is she going to listen to other voices?
right. And like I said, there are other organizations that are on the ground that when you talk about it, it sounds like the work is very similar. In the full interview, Andre Taylor elaborated on some of what he saw as the differences between his work and existing organizations like Community Passageway and things like that. But one thing that did come out of this was that I think that in our community we have to make a decision. We have to make, because people in other communities are going to say what they want to say. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, and that's fine. In our community, we don't all have to agree. But you see, there's two parallel narratives in our community right now. We're investing. The city taxpayers, philanthropy groups are investing in these programs that we've mentioned, like Choose 180, Community Passageways, United Better Thinking, Build and Brick. And the whole point right now of those and family or urban family, the whole point of those organizations right now is to take young people who probably made a mistake and they're in the criminal justice system and put them on the right path. That's the whole point. So they don't reoffend and that they become productive members of society. A lot of these young people, they've gone to jail. They've gotten out of jail, they've done their time, and now they'll go to a Community Passageways and Choose 180, and they'll find employment, help buying a home, all these kind of things, and they become productive members of society. And so we're telling our young people, there's all these programs that are telling our young people, you know what, your life's not over. Don't throw your life away. If you made a mistake, you know what I'm saying? Let's change the trajectory of your life, and the sky is the limit, right? So that's one side of the narrative. But then the other side is that you do have an Andre Taylor who, man, he's a criminal. He admitted it. You know what I'm saying? It's all over the place with him. But he went to prison. He got out of prison. He's changed his trajectory. Now, I don't agree on a lot of like his ideology. It's a lot of people I don't agree with. But the whole point is that you got part of our community that's telling young people, you know what, man, if you made a mistake, let's get you on the right track. The sky's the limit. Now you've got Andre Taylor, who his primary thing that he's been pulled down on was his criminal past, which is horrible. That criminal past is horrible. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's no sweeping that underneath the rug or anything at all. But do you get what I'm saying? How, on one side we're telling young people who might be in the criminal justice system, you can still go as high as, the sky's the limit. But on another side, we're pulling down.
Well, I think that it's more so, and this is why I keep bringing it back to the relationship between, the city and community. And unfortunately, that's where this lies. I don't think it has anything to do with, even his credibility. I think some folks may question that, but ultimately it's really about, well, man, you could have done this work, in collaboration with others, instead of saying to the mayor, like, hey, all right, I'm right here, I'll be the street czar. I'm about to do this.
So is the issue him or is the issue the mayor?
I think it's a little bit of both, right? I think that's what it is. There's already issues with the city and community, right? This is what I'm saying. Historically, there already is issues between city and their decisions and the community. And we're seeing now this merge with what the city council just did. We're seeing this merge, but the mayor did the veto. So it's like what the mayor is showing is that, hey, my plan is to kind of go with groups like Not This Time and Andre Taylor, and I'm gonna do my own kind of plan over here, and it feels like Andre is a part of that.
Well, so okay, well, if you took Andre out of that position and put somebody else who's in the community in the street czar position, or maybe you called it the de-escalation specialist position, whatever you want to call it, would it be an issue there? Is the issue this position where you've got the head black guy who's now, you know what I'm saying, the top black guy who's looking over what all the other black agencies to de-escalate? Is that the issue, or is the issue that it's Andre Taylor who's actually holding that position? You know, is the problem the position itself?
That's a really great question, because I think if you listen to different community members or ask that to different community members, you'll get different responses. Some may feel that it is about Andre Taylor, that it is about his checkered past. And yeah, you do, you know, people do get second chances, but maybe some are still uncomfortable there. I think ultimately people understand in America this second chance story. People totally get that. But I do think that for me, and where I hear a lot out there, is that it's about the position itself. It's really about that the fact that this feels like, you know, old normal tactics. This is like a bag of old tricks where, hey, I'm going to get my, you know, I'm going to listen to kind of like what we talk about all the time. You know, hey, I got the ear of the mayor. I got the preachers. I got the this. I got the that. They represent Black community. We've said it all the time. Black folks are not a monolith. The Black community is not a monolith. And that's why, you know, bringing in a real collective is important and imperative as we move forward. It shouldn't be about, you know, one organization, you know, overseeing everything else. I think it really needs to be about, hey, we understand that this is collective work from the community, and we want to give that collective body some representation to where we can meet collectively with the mayor and other city officials to decide how to do this collectively. And to be honest, that's what the participatory budget is all about.
Well, we're going to know here soon enough, at least from the mayor, because the mayor's supposed to be, and we'll talk about that a little later here in the show. We've gone super long, but the mayor's supposed to be unveiling that her budget altogether, but that $100 million that she promised the Black community. You know, it'll be real interesting. I can't wait, you know, for this press conference or to talk to the mayor. It'd be interesting to talk to the mayor when, you know, the press conferences, you only get to ask one question and maybe a follow-up. So it'd be nice to actually talk to Mayor Durkin and get the rationale and the thinking and the thought process that went into this $100 million. But listen, before I get too far, so Andre Taylor, you know, Andre Taylor, a convicted sex trafficker. Back in the day, they called it a pimp. These days, they call it sex trafficker, right? You know, he's now got a $150,000 contract with the city of Seattle. And so I just want to show you, though, how crazy things are in Seattle right now.
Seattle's Office of Police Accountability is also looking into new allegations that a police captain was given preferential treatment after being arrested for soliciting a prostitute. King 5's Chris Daniels has that story.
Whether or not the captain received preferential treatment from his chain of command, and that's definitely an aspect of the case that we're going to look into. But
that's the reaction tonight from Andrew Meyerberg, who heads Seattle's Office of Police Accountability, to allegations officers gave preferential treatment to a police captain arrested in a prostitution sting.
May I talk to the sergeant?
The Seattle Times broke the news that body cam video showed the arrest of Captain Randall Woolery and a sergeant telling Woolery he would make the arrest as painless as possible before turning off the camera.
Can we go around the corner for a second? Yeah, that's fine. I'm going to turn off my camera just for a minute.
The Times says Woolery was in contact with high-ranking officers almost immediately and taken downtown instead of the North Precinct, where he was given an expedited booking and release. King 5 told you about the arrest last November, part of an Aurora Avenue prostitution sting. Woolery, who reviewed use of force cases, has been on paid leave since, charged with sexual exploitation. The misdemeanor case has been held up because of the COVID crisis, while he also continues to serve as a Snohomish County Fire Commissioner. The allegations add a new layer as reform remains a hot topic in this town.
Turning off of the body cam has been looked at, investigated, and it was deemed to be a violation of policy. And before she retired, Chief Best had approved that case and imposed discipline on the sergeant.
All right, so we're joined by Nikki Barron now, producer Nikki Barron, and I brought Nikki in because Nikki is very, very big on women's rights, you know, everything over, all in that lane. And I wanted to point something out. This is the city that we're living in right now, though, right? So the city that we're living in hired an ex a human trafficker who was convicted years ago he's been out for 20 some odd years, paying him $150,000 a year. And the city also has a police officer who's engaging in sex trafficking, who's on paid leave getting $174,000 a year. So it's like the city of Seattle, especially if this is if the issue around sex trafficking and the issue of women and women representation and everything else, you got an officer who also, by the way, it wasn't just the fact that he got arrested for solicitation and that he's on leave, still getting $174,000 a year and still doing something in Snohomish County, but also got preferential treatment. They turned off the body camera, they gave him an expedited booking and everything else. Now, Nikki, I wanted you to come in here because, I mean, when these two things were happening simultaneously and talking to you, you had so much frustration and angst about it. So I thought that today might be a good day for you to elaborate on this further.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a few points in this that really rub me the wrong way. One is, that he did get that preferential treatment. It's more evidence that there is a culture of secrecy and there's a culture of protecting each other in the police force. And we're seeing that everywhere right now. So it's just more evidence that the police are going to lie and do whatever they can to protect each other and give each other preferential treatment. So there's that aspect. There's the other aspect of, he's getting a lot of money to sit at home while this case is on pause because they're not doing misdemeanor cases right now. So the OPA also decided they would also not investigate until the misdemeanor case is being investigated. So he's just sitting at home getting paid. And he didn't have to go through the same shaming process that the other 4 people arrested during the same sting are having to go through. And then when you look at his position, this man has been entrusted to oversee when other police officers need to be looked at for accountability. And yet he's over here on Aurora engaging in sex work with a term that they call survival sex work, which is not sex work that is done by choice, but it's rather something they're forced into, which predominantly is Black and brown communities, trans communities are the ones that are being forced into sex work. 80% of survival sex workers are also unhoused. So here's this person who's supposed to be the moral judgment of police officers when they make quote unquote mistakes, is engaging in abuse of vulnerable communities. So those are kind of the big things for me that, like, when I saw this story, I just went right there because it was just extremely frustrating.
Right, and you're no fan. You're no fan of Andre Taylor. I would just throw it out there. You know what I'm saying? We went the other day up there, and I mean, me and you had a lot of discussion about Andre going into that interview and after the interview.
Yeah, I appreciated you taking me with you so that I could meet him myself. I could watch the full interview and really get a sense of, what he says he stands for. And yeah, what Andre did is, again, it's not ethical sex work. It wasn't like he, was building a platform for women to engage in sex work that they chose to engage in and make, the money that they want to make. It was pulling women from your own community and turning them out on the street for his profit. And I understand, we live in a country where we say you do your time and you can reform and you can come back and be a member of society again. And if I want to believe that about other people who've made mistakes, I have to believe that about Andre Taylor as well. But yeah, it's a very similar situation, and it's really messed up because the people taking advantage, like the Johns, quote unquote, it's the exact same charge if you are a prostitute or if you actually solicit sex. So and more likely the prostitute is sent to prison or sent to jail. And there's a lot of complicated rules around what happens once you get there for people who work in sex work, and the man leaves with a ticket. So it's a really unfair system where the people who are vulnerable, who feel forced to engage in this work, are also penalized harder than the people who take advantage of those people.
Right, right, and I'm right before I pop you in here, Triana. I just thought that it's interesting for the public to see like what's going on here. You know what I'm saying, in the city, and I'm doing this work. I've met quite a few female officers over at SPD and had conversations with them about this particular case right here. And there's a lot of comments, that aren't privy to the public that's made that kind of shows that what they alluded to was that, it's an environment that's very much not okay that's over there when this right here, when we see this in plain sight. And like I said, this officer, now Andre Taylor got 150,000, and this officer got 174,000. They're coming and going over here. Oh, what are you saying, Triana?
No, I was just going to say, I agree with you that it's, Nikki, thank you for pulling out those facts and highlighting them, because I think you're so right in terms of people understanding the severity of the charges. And, yes, this idea that second chances exist is one thing, but you're right where, folks, it makes people uncomfortable, because how much can you really show retribution for that? And I think that that's where we as a society have a lot of work to do there, because it is very objective in that regard, right? You do your time, you come out, you're doing great work for community, and that's amazing. I think you're, also too, I'm glad you were there so that you could meet him too and be able to hear the whole interview. So I can't wait to touch bases with you afterwards. But, honestly, I think that, excuse me. Oh, sorry, I had to sneeze. But I think that putting those two salaries up against one another and really doing a comparison between the two stories is right on point, because we're seeing this now. It's across color lines. And so I'm wondering, is the city or, the police force, is there some type of leniency when it comes to sex trafficking? Once again, showcasing that the men are not going to be really taking the brunt of these cases.
Yeah, I mean, it's 100% is sex trafficking. Andre Taylor was convicted for sex trafficking. This officer right here arrested for it. Now, everybody has a different name. Back in those days, it was called pimping. You know what I'm saying? And pimping and John and everything else. And these days, it's called sex trafficking. And so, like I said, this is our city right now. I mean, imagine that.
I also wanted to point out that when the media mentions Andre Taylor, they never fail to mention that he was a pimp. But when the media has covered this officer, they always say that he was a wonderful officer, that he's been in high regard. So they're like, look at this bad thing he did, but look how wonderful he actually is. He just made a mistake. But with Andre, they're like, look at this wonderful thing he did, but don't forget that he used to be a pimp. And that's very clearly has to do with the color of their skin.
Yeah, we see this kind of media all the time. Once again, part of the old normal.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing that we see here is, how many years has this officer been out there sex trafficking?
Yeah.
That's the even bigger question. How many other times maybe was he caught in this thing before they had the body cam? The body cam made the officer be accountable, even though he turned off the body cam. The body cam made the officer hold him accountable, and they at least had to book him and expedite him. How long a guy's been out there before the body cams that got caught up in stings?
It's also wild because it's been known that they've been doing stings since 2017 on Aurora, ever since so they've been doing that. So this guy knew that there was this potential risk that he was going to get caught and picked up. And you know why he engaged in it? Because he knew that even if he did get caught, it was going to be okay. It wasn't going to be a big deal, that his police officer brothers and sisters were going to watch his back, turn off their body cams, and make sure this all went away. And that's why he had the gumption to go out there knowing that he could get picked up.
Yeah, you know what? Also, too, I'll say that this also goes to a larger modicum around the excessive use of authority. Okay, because honestly, officers, when it comes to sex trafficking and taking advantage of certain suspects, certain victims at times, we hear these stories come out, and it is true. The excessive use of their authority and that power struggle and how they utilize and wield their power. This this is another example of that. And honestly, I wonder, like you are just saying, oh, I wonder how many times has he actually abused his power and gotten sex in ways that was not voluntary, as you mentioned earlier, Nikki, which I think also is so important to acknowledge, because there is a major difference between someone who goes, this person chooses this lifestyle and I'm choosing to pay them for sex. And I know that it's wrong, but we're both making choices here, versus understanding that you are going through some type of faction that has people that are not voluntarily doing this. That is also very, very key here. And it says a lot about this person's character. And that to me is what always should be at the forefront of this. It's I'm sorry, it's almost disgusting that he's at home getting paid right now while these charges are still formulating. It's reprehensible.
When they asked the commanding officer, about this, what do you think about this? His response was, sex workers like it. They like this work. This is what they like to do. And it's like a $40 sex act on Aurora is not a person who's enjoying their sex work and they're feeling empowered and they're using their body how they want to use it. You know what I mean? Like, and for his commanding officer or the officer the highest ranking officer involved in the arrest, for him to say that is just, it's irresponsible. It's irresponsible to say that a $40 sex act on Aurora is the same as the women in Las Vegas who are engaging in legal sex work. Like, to make that association is also just like completely trying to act like this is no big deal. And it absolutely is a big deal when an officer whose entire job is to judge other officers' mistakes is out here doing this, knowing he's going to get it covered up and not worried about it. And now he's at home getting paid. Like, wow. He's even getting paid more than Andre Taylor.
Wow. This is the triple entendre here. Oh, this is really the Oreo right here, because it's got the layers.
We fired up today. Hey, look, we're going to take a short break right now. When we come back, I had an interview with Ashley Hiruko from KUOW about what's going on at the King County Jail. You are watching the Morning Update Show.
We're right here at East Precinct. It doesn't get any closer than this right now.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents.
As a small independent media company, we rely on the financial support of individuals and business members to stay on the front lines of the news that's important to you.
All right, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. My name's Omari Salisbury.
And I am Trey Holiday. Hey.
Yay, holiday. So check it out. Ashley Hiruko over at KUOW, journalist over there. Man, she did some reporting about the King County Jail, and it's like, man, the whole article is crazy, and it talks about like years and years and years of, man, really at this point, systemic racism against Black correction officers in the King County jail system. And I mean, she talks about how like Black correction officers come over there and literally people have wiped their butt with toilet paper and put the toilet paper in their shoes, made all kinds of comments. There's lots of nepotism over there. There's people who are getting looked over for jobs and everything else. And there's actually a story in there of a CO that ended up committing suicide. He was a former Marine, and he was a corrections officer over there, committed suicide. Let me bring this up here. 1 second. Here we go. So this is the she kind of goes through. It's about 6 minutes right here, but I would encourage everybody to go and check out the article. It's on KUOW's website. All right, here with Ashley Hiruko, journalist with KUOW Public Radio. Ashley, I wanted to hit you up because I saw the article here that you wrote, and it says feces in a locker and other harassment. Racism is rife in the King County Corrections, employees say. Please tell us all about it.
So yeah, I mean, this story, and to summarize it, is just I've talked to a lot of corrections officers within the jail in King County, and they have told me about different levels of racism that's happening there, not only overt racism, but also institutional racism in different forms. Longtime employees there told me that they faced harassment, name calling. One employee, a 30-year-old veteran, Stephen Porter, told me not once but twice in the last 5 years he's found feces wadded up in toilet paper in his shoes. His locker has been vandalized, and he says his complaints fall on deaf ears. And this is not only him. This is multiple COs that have told me this and shared this story with me, that there's racism rife there, and nothing's being done.
Now, I'm reading through this article. Of course, the big story that popped out was Anthony Eigner, who was a CO there, who was also used to be in the U.S. Marine Corps and ended up committing suicide. Can you talk more about Anthony Eigner?
Yeah, so Anthony Eigner was in the Marines. He was hired on at the King County Jail in 2014. He soon started to notice kind of this racism undercurrent there. Employees would criticize the way he looked, or, when he grew out his hair, his afro. They compared him to a 70s porn star. They compared his family to the movie Black Panther, just like jokes nonstop. And that's the kind of culture there is there. But not only that, but he started feeling burned out. He was being placed on booking a lot, which is one of the more stressful posts there at the jail. It's more involved, more time consuming. And he asked his superior, hey, I need a break. I'm really burnt out. This is really wearing me down, multiple times, and they kind of ignored his requests. And for Anthony, it seemed like that was just it. All of the name calling, all of the things that he's reporting, his complaints about, brown and Black inmates being treated with excessive force and nothing happening about those. It just all kind of stemmed to this one point where the straw just broke the camel's back, and he went up to the 11th floor where he wasn't supposed to be. He got into this altercation with his superior, who essentially rocked his taser from his holster and threatened to forcibly remove Anthony Eigner from the jail where he worked. And after that, he was placed on administrative leave. He was eventually fired, and he killed himself 6 months later.
Wow. And something else that you mentioned in here was some of the stuff that's on social media. And you talk about one of the corrections officers used a photo of Kyle Rittenhouse, and that was the gunman there in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And basically the meme said, "Great shot, 2 less votes for Uncle Joe. Trump, Trump, Trump."
Yeah, exactly. So this is just one post that was kind of shared online by Sade Smith, who is an attorney here locally, who was sent these posts by a whistleblower there within the jail. And his post kind of just encapsulates the kind of tension that's growing there. And I've heard this from other CEOs too, that this year it's gotten much worse. It feels more divisive than ever, that there is this fraction there of employees who are very much so Trump supporters, and they hold these beliefs that, these protesters, that post speaks for itself. What he wrote speaks for itself. And it was concerning not only to the CEOs there, but it's concerning to protesters as well, who might find themselves in the jail.
Right. And one of the biggest things that came across, well, amongst many big things here in this article, is it seems to be that the problems there at the jail are systemic, meaning that, it's embedded, it's baked into the cake, and there's no easy fix. You got some people who say that they've been filing complaints for years and years, and there's been no action on it. Is that what you're finding and what your reporting found, a systemic problem there at the jail?
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. It's systemic. It's continuing on. When you don't, I asked one longtime corrections officer, how do we change this? What do we do to change it? How can we make things better? What do you wish would have changed? And she said, I wish that they would have brought the hammer down on wrongdoers instead of letting people who did wrong walk away with no more than a slap on the wrist or, you know, a little bit of paid administrative leave. Like, there is no consequences for these kinds of actions. And so everyone there knows they can get away with it.
All right, before I let you go, what question didn't I ask you here that you want people to know about this article?
I mean, I guess it's just, I guess the most interesting thing to me was the fact that these CEOs were so willing to talk to me. And it's not that these problems just came about. I feel like it's just no one's listening, you know?
Wow. Well, maybe this article's out now. People will listen more. I do know that, like, we hear these kind of complaints across the county, across all kinds of different positions over there in the county. Ashley, how can people keep up with you on KUOW?
You can follow me on Twitter, online, and I will pull up my address right now because I don't know it off the top of my head. It's at Ashley Hiruko, and then you can follow. I mean, if you have a tip, if you want to reach me, I'd love to talk with people. You know, my email address is hiruko@kuow.org. And one more thing, you know, you said about hearing complaints across the county. After I published this article, I started getting emails from employees across the county saying that there is racism in their own departments. It's not just a county jail. It is widespread.
Absolutely. Oh,
there we go.
There we go. Yeah, I was just going to say too that this is something that I am so inspired by. Because, you know, for me, at the heart of me, I am a documentarian, right? And so I heard some really horrific stories from folks inside the county myself last year. And honestly, it sparked a whole thing for me on doing a series on adult bullying. How, you know, there's some people that just, you know, get older with their age, but their mentality doesn't change. And it really enters into the workplace. And it's unfortunate how wrecked it is within the county.
Yeah, no, for sure. If you recall, the county employees, they actually did a protest. I think it was probably like 6 weeks or 2 months ago. County employees protested because they were, you know, talking about the environment there. Hey, look, Trey, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we got some, we're going to talk about the protests last night here in Seattle, down at Westlake and Capitol Hill. You're watching the Morning Update Show.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.
All right, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. We'll jump right into it here. So 2 protests last night, 2 totally different outcomes. I was at the protest in Westlake from beginning to end. It started at Westlake, only went a few blocks over to the federal courthouse on Stewart Street, ended in a candlelight vigil for Breonna Taylor. After that, I caught a protest already underway up on Capitol Hill. Me and Jake Gravbrot caught up with Bobby Stills, Eric Calligraphy up there. And when we arrived, protesters were there on 11th and Pine, a very common location for them at this point. And we saw police come downhill. And then there was the pushback back and forth and back and forth. And, you know, a lot of people probably know by now that, you know, there's footage of a SPD police officer being hit in the back of his helmet by someone with a baseball bat. And then there's also footage of a protester's neck getting ridden over on a bike by an SPD officer. SPD, I don't have these clips in here, either one of those. So this is just our footage that we have right here. But SPD is saying that the incident with the person getting their neck rolled over on the bike is being investigated by OPA. First, let's go down to Westlake. This was at the U.S. Courthouse, Westlake Center and the U.S. Courthouse.
How can I leave you to speak in our faces? It's not right, people.
All right, so that was the scene down in Westlake last night. Candlelight vigil there at the U.S. courthouse on Stewart Street. And now Capitol Hill. This clip right here, and this is the best thing about live streaming is clearly for a show like this we have to edit something, and we don't like to clip too much. Especially if it's interaction like that with the police and the protesters. Invite everybody. You can go to our Facebook page and you can see this full stream from last night. It's an hour and 10 minutes. But where this stream picks up is that, like I said, when we first arrived, some protesters were there on 11th and Pine. And like a minute or two after we arrived, the police had come down to push them out of the intersection. They pushed them out of the intersection and the police retreated, right? And then while the police retreated, the protesters moved up Pine and at that point set up a barricade across Pine. And they lit a fire there at the barricade. And so this is what you see. This is what occurred prior to this clip. But, like I said, for people who are into this, the full stream is on our Facebook page.
The police have now made a presence. And now the police are coming down the hill. Of course, the main street is obstructed. You see the police moving down the sidewalk over there to the north. The police are moving down the sidewalk. We're going to take a position over here at this this telephone pole. We see the flashbangs are out.
Flashbangs are out. Gas is in the air. It's in the air.
Just watch anything thrown in this direction.
Okay.
Watch it. Coming through the center.
Oh. Okay. We're right here. We've got a position over here on the southwest corner of 11th and Pine. We see.
Another one to the center.
Okay. We see the flashbangs are out. We see SPD moving through this trash barricade. Okay. We got media assembled over here in the corner. The police are now, of course, we hear this with the bikes, the move back with the bikes. The gas is out. Gas is out. Shit, it's getting through the mask. It's out. The officers are even eating the gas right now. I don't know what this is, but again, it's very smoky up here. It's smoky up here now. You see the police. There's a lieutenant. We see it now. Here goes the pushback. Here's the pushback.
I got you.
Thank you. Thank you. You see the flashbangs?
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I spend my night. I thought it was gonna be nice and quiet. Like after leaving the vigil downtown at the U.S. courthouse, I was with Jake drive by, and I'm like, man, this is dope. This is gonna be a nice quiet night and everything, because when we go out for something like this, there's so much gear and equipment. You be ready to take it off. Had on these heavy rain boots, and went up to Capitol Hill, and man, just arrived. And like I said, that clip right there isn't representative from when we just arrived. When we just arrived, there was compared to that, it was a small pushback on some bikes, and they pushed back across the street. And then that's the second pushback off of Pine. And then after that, like I said, I was on Cairo FM this morning. I lost a lot of COVID weight last night because it went all the way around. Oddly enough, the pushback on it went all the way around Capitol Hill and ended back right there on 11th and Pine in Cal Anderson.
Wow.
So yeah,
wow. Another night of action. Oh.
Yeah, I tell people I'm too old for this. And then I saw the guy, David Malkin Tango. Man, he got a big tool. He does the pole cam. And man, he's just running with the pole. And I was like, I gotta step my game up out here. You know what I'm saying? I'm struggling. So look, I wanted to. We're way over time. We got another shoot that's coming in here in the studio, but I just wanted to address like a few things. Is one, again, it's going to be interesting what the mayor is going to do. You know, one, of course, on this free the funds. You know, around defund, but also on this $100 million. You're talking about the mayor says she's committing $100 million a year for 10 years. That's $1 billion in investment in community. And, you know, for me, I'm very interested in knowing the methodology behind it. You know, who are the experts that went into this? It's not even just for me. It's like for all of our citizens, stakeholders, taxpayers, and everything else. It's like, man, what methodology went into this? How did you, you know, formulate who gets what? Or is it already rolled out yet? Or can people, you know, submit, I don't know, applications? I mean, I'm sure that some of that is going to be explained whenever she does her presser. But, you know, I got a lot of questions that the community wants to know. And I'm sure somebody's going to be like, man, don't put the mayor on your platform. You're platforming the mayor. Nah, people in our community, the Black community, to who we're accountable for, these are the questions that our community wants to know from the mayor.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're so right. We've been talking about it since the beginning when they did the federal release of funds. Follow the money. At the end of the day, the people can no longer be, you know, left in the shadows while decisions are being made. I think there's been a great platform and framework with, you know, things like participatory budgeting that really brings community members in. You know, it's not just about folks who represent organizations, but it could be everyday people. And so I think that that's where we need to go. We're seeing that that's the voice. And I'm really hoping that they find a way to do a full-on community collaborative process.
Yeah, I mean, this is like of course there's two issues right now with the mayor. There's the free the funds around the veto and everything else, but there's $1 billion question for the mayor, starting with 100 million. So, you know, if you're listening down there at City Hall, love to have an opportunity to talk to the mayor and ask community questions about, man, what's happening with this money? You know, what's the word? Because I know, like I said, you know, they got their press release, it's this and that, everything. We gonna ask the question, Big Mama and them gonna ask, you know what I'm saying? And you know, our small business owners are gonna ask, and our parents and our teachers and people in our community. So, you know, City Hall, I'll send an email over there to City Hall so I can formally see if I can get a conversation with Mayor Durkin and ask these kind of questions that our community specifically wants to know.
There we go, man. Stay on it, oh.
All right, so man, you know, we've got to get out of here. Like I said, we're way over time. Let me pull this up over here, and I just want to reassert this and reaffirm this to anybody who's out there, and you might have forgot or it didn't dawn on you. And I got a few messages here that a light bulb went off on people's head when I mentioned this earlier. Is that, man, we are a privately ran and operated Black-owned media company that is accountable and responsible to the Central District of Seattle, the South End, Seattle's legacy Black community. You, as a white liberal way out somewhere over here who's enjoying your white privilege, you are not able to sit here and tell the Black community what news they can get and not get. Like, I hope you realize, that's why I got to put it in these kind of terms. I hope you realize this is the ultimate of white privilege, to sit there and think you can just censor Black media, tell us who we can put on and who we can't, who can interview and who we can't. We're accountable and responsible to the people of the legacy Black community of Seattle, and not to you guys. So you're more than welcome. Unfollow me. You know what I'm saying? You're more than welcome to turn the channel. But we're gonna continue what we've been doing for years, by the way, years over here. Years, we're going to continue that, and we're going to continue to be accountable to our parents, our grandparents, our aunts and uncles, and nieces and nephews in the Central District and the South End, and that's who will always come first to us. And like I said, if you got a problem, come over to our neighborhood. Let's see if somebody recognizes you. Since you got so much to say, let's see who recognizes you on Union. Let's see who recognizes you on Jefferson, on Cherry, on Henderson, on Othello, on MLK and Rainier. You know, find me in any of those streets and show me somebody who knows you, since you know best about our Black community.
Getting them all, letting them know, and making sure they heard the message from the beginning. Thank you.
Amen to that. I'm already standing, Trey.
All right. I'm going to get there. Okay, guys. Excuse me. All right. There we go.
All right. There it is. Until tomorrow at 11 a.m. Peace.
Lift every voice and sing till earth in heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song